My husband demanded I give my inherited house to his brother because he needs it more. I said that's not happening. He threatened to rethink our custody arrangement, so I granted him a divorce. The look on his face when he realized he lost me, our daughter, and access to the house was priceless. I'm Isabella Martinez, 34 years old, been married to Andrew for 7 years. We have a 5-year-old daughter, Maya. I work as an accountant at a mid-sized firm, steady income, good benefits, the kind of job that lets me sleep at night knowing the bills are covered. Andrew's in sales, and when he's doing well, he's doing really well. Problem is, when he's not, he has this habit of borrowing from our joint account without asking. I've learned to keep a separate emergency fund he doesn't know about. About 18 months ago, my world changed when my grandmother passed away and left me her house. Abuela was the strongest woman I ever knew. She immigrated here from Mexico in 1963 with my grandfather, carrying nothing but hope and determination. While my grandfather worked construction, she cleaned houses during the day and took in sewing at night. Every penny they saved went toward buying that little 3-bedroom, 2-bath house in 1967. She used to tell me stories while teaching me to make tamales in that kitchen. How she scrubbed the hardwood floors on her hands and knees for months to get them perfect. How she planted every rosebush in the backyard herself, even though she'd never gardened before. How she painted every room twice because she wanted it just right for her children and their children. Mija, she'd say, her weathered hands guiding mine as we folded masa, never let anyone take what's yours. I lost everything once trusting the wrong people back home. This house, it's not just wood and nails. It's proof that we belong here. It's your foundation. The house isn't fancy by today's standards, but it's beautiful in its simplicity. The kitchen she renovated herself in the 80s still has the yellow tile she was so proud of. The hardwood floors she insisted on gleam in the afternoon sun. The backyard is perfect for Maya to play in. She could have her own swing set. Maybe we could finally get her that puppy she's been begging for. When I inherited it, Andrew and I made what seemed like a practical decision. We were stuck in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment with a lease that didn't end until next year. Maya was sleeping on a twin bed crammed into what was basically a large closet. The plan was to move into Abuela's house once our lease ended, give Maya a real childhood home with space to run and play. In the meantime, we'd rent it out. I found this lovely retired couple, the Johnsons, who'd been looking for a quiet place close to their grandchildren. The $2,800 monthly rent covered the property taxes, insurance, and basic maintenance, with enough left over to start a college fund for Maya. It felt responsible, like something Abuela would approve of. Andrew seemed fine with the arrangement. We'd drive by sometimes on Sundays, and he'd talk about which room would be his office, how he'd help Maya plant a garden. I started a separate account just for the house. Every rental payment went in, every expense came out. Clean books, clear boundaries. For over a year, everything was smooth. The Johnsons were model tenants. Maya was excited about moving to Abuela's house, and I felt like I was honoring my grandmother's legacy while building something for my daughter's future. Then 3 weeks ago, everything went sideways. Andrew's brother, Kevin, went through what he calls a messy divorce, though from what I've observed over the years, Kevin's problems usually stem from Kevin's choices. His ex-wife got the house, probably because she was the one making the mortgage payments, while Kevin spent money on weekend trips with his buddies. She got primary custody of their 2 kids too, which Kevin claims is unfair, though he hasn't exactly been Father of the Year. Now Kevin's been couch surfing, claiming he can't find anywhere decent he can afford. The truth is, Kevin's never met a dollar he couldn't spend. Last year, while claiming he was broke, he bought a $32,000 truck because his old one wasn't reliable. This is the same truck he now uses to drive to weekend fishing trips while claiming poverty. But suddenly, Kevin's poor financial decisions became everyone else's emergency to solve. Andrew came home 3 weeks ago from helping Kevin move his stuff into storage, and I could tell something was brewing. He had that look, the one that meant he'd already decided I was going to be unreasonable about whatever he was about to ask. "Babe, we need to talk about the house." I was folding Maya's laundry, trying to figure out how a 5-year-old could go through so many clothes in a week. "What about it?" "Kevin's having a hard time finding a place. His lease situation is rough. I think we should let him move in." I stopped mid-fold. The Johnsons have 6 months left on their lease. After that, obviously, it would help him get back on his feet, give him a stable place while he figures things out. I could see exactly where this was going, and my stomach started to knot. He'd need to pay rent, though. We can't afford to cover all the property expenses ourselves. Andrew's face changed, shifting into that cold expression that meant he'd already decided I was being difficult. "He's family, Isabella. He's going through a hard time. That's what family does. We help each other." Helping is offering to help him budget, maybe letting him crash on our couch for a week while he finds something in his price range, not giving him a free house. It wouldn't be free. It's family. The distinction he was making didn't exist in my mind. "Andrew, the property taxes alone are $3,600 a year, plus insurance, maintenance, repairs when things break. The rental income covers all that." "So he pays the property taxes. That's way less than market rent." "That's not how property ownership works." I set down Maya's tiny shirts, needing my hands free for this conversation. And honestly, mixing family and money is always a disaster waiting to happen. He got that cold look then, the one that told me he'd already made up his mind about how this conversation should go. "I think you should just let him have it." The words hung in the air like smoke. I actually laughed, a short, disbelieving sound. "Let him have what?" "The house. Sign it over to him." Everything went quiet except for the hum of our ancient refrigerator and Maya's cartoons playing softly in the living room. I stared at my husband, waiting for the punchline that never came. "You want me to give Kevin my grandmother's house, the house I inherited, the house we planned to raise Maya in." "He needs it more than we do, Isabella. He's got kids he's trying to get custody of again. A stable home would help his case with the court." I felt something cold settle in my chest. We have a kid. Maya was excited about moving there, having her own room, getting that puppy we promised her. "Maya will be fine. Kids adapt. They're resilient. Kids adapt." Like Maya's feelings about losing the home we'd been promising her for months didn't matter. Like the bedtime stories I'd been telling her about the garden we'd plant together, the swing set Daddy would build, the room where she could finally display all her art projects. None of that mattered because kids adapt. "Andrew, this is insane. You're talking about a $240,000 asset, my inheritance, my grandmother's life's work. It's just sitting there generating rent money we don't even really need. Just sitting there. Like it wasn't the culmination of my grandmother's dreams, her proof that she belonged in this country, her gift to future generations." "We're saving that money for Maya's college fund," I said, my voice tighter than I wanted it to be. "Plans change, babe. Family comes first." "Maya is my family." The words came out sharper than I intended. "This house is her inheritance too." Andrew shook his head like I was missing some obvious point. "If you really loved me, you'd want to help my brother. This could save his relationship with his kids." There it was, the manipulation I'd been dreading. The same tactic he'd been using for years whenever he wanted something unreasonable, questioning my love, making his wants seem like moral imperatives. "Don't," I said quietly. "Don't what?" "Don't make this about love. Don't make helping your financially irresponsible brother a test of our marriage." But he was already shaking his head, already digging in. "Maybe it is a test, Isabella. Maybe I need to know if my wife prioritizes some house over family unity. Some house, my grandmother's house, the place where she taught me to be strong, where she showed me what it meant to build something lasting, some house. Family unity? What about Maya's stability? What about the future we planned for her? Kevin's kids need their dad around more. If he had a stable home, he could get joint custody, maybe even primary. Those kids are suffering because their dad can't provide a stable environment." Something in his tone made my skin crawl. The way he said it, like I was personally responsible for Kevin's children's well-being. Like my grandmother's sacrifice should be undone to fix Kevin's poor choices. That's not my responsibility, Andrew. Kevin's custody situation isn't my problem to solve with my inheritance. Andrew's voice dropped to that quiet, dangerous tone that I'd learned to fear over the years. If you're going to be this selfish about family, maybe I need to rethink our whole situation, including what's best for Maya. The blood drained from my face. What does that mean? Maybe she needs to see what real family loyalty looks like. Maybe joint custody would be better if you're going to teach her that money matters more than people. The room tilted. He'd just threatened our custody arrangement over a house for his brother. My hands started shaking, and I had to grip the edge of the kitchen counter. This was Andrew, my husband, Maya's father, threatening to take our daughter away because I wouldn't give his brother my inheritance. The man who'd held my hand through morning sickness, who'd cried when Maya took her first steps, who'd promised to love and protect our family, was now using our child as leverage. For a moment, I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. This wasn't the man I'd married. This wasn't the father who read Maya bedtime stories and made her pancakes shaped like butterflies on Sunday mornings. This was someone else wearing his face, someone who could look me in the eye and threaten the thing I valued most in the world. "You're threatening to take Maya away from me," I whispered, "because I won't give your brother my house. I'm saying that if you're going to put property before family—" "Stop!" The word came out like a crack of thunder. "Just stop talking." Something had clicked in my brain, like a switch flipping from off to on. Suddenly, everything was crystal clear. This wasn't about Kevin's housing situation. This wasn't about family loyalty or helping someone in need. This was about control. This was about Andrew believing he could threaten the most precious thing in my life, and I would crumble, would hand over my grandmother's legacy to avoid conflict. He'd miscalculated. "Okay," I said quietly. "Okay, what?" "Okay, let's get divorced." All the color drained from his face. "What? Isabella, I didn't mean—" "You just threatened to take my daughter away if I don't give your brother my inheritance. So yes, let's get divorced." "Wait, I was just—" He reached for me, but I stepped back. "Just what? Just trying to manipulate me? Just threatening the most important thing in my life to get what you want?" "You're overreacting. I didn't mean it like that." "How did you mean it, Andrew?" "Because it sounded exactly like, 'Give my brother your inheritance, or I'll make sure you lose your child.'" "Babe, come on. We can work this out. I was emotional. You know how I get when family's involved." "No." The word came out steady and final. "We can't work this out. You just showed me exactly who you are." "Isabella, please." "Pack a bag." "You can't be serious." "I'm dead serious. You threatened our daughter to get me to hand over my grandmother's house to your brother. There's nothing to work out. We have 7 years together. Maya needs both her parents. You can't just throw that away over this." But I could. I was. I left that night with Maya, drove straight to my mom's house with a bag hastily packed and my daughter asking why mommy was crying. How do you explain to a 5-year-old that daddy threatened to take her away? That the house she'd been dreaming about living in became a weapon in an argument she couldn't possibly understand? "Mommy and Daddy are having grown-up problems," I told her, buckling her into her car seat with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. "We're going to stay with Abuela Carmen for a little while." My mom took one look at my face and didn't ask questions, just pulled Maya into a hug and told her they were going to make hot chocolate and watch princess movies. Then she sat me down at her kitchen table, the same one where she'd helped me with homework 20 years ago, and waited. When I finally got the words out, when I told her about Andrew's threat, my mother's face went through a series of expressions I'd rarely seen. Shock, then anger, then something cold and determined. "Mija," she said quietly, "your father and I didn't raise you to let anyone threaten your child, not even your husband. That was 3 weeks ago. My phone's been blowing up ever since. Kevin texted me directly the day after I left. 'I can't believe you're destroying your family over a house. My kids need stability and you're being selfish.' Like somehow I owed him a house. Like his children's well-being was my responsibility to solve with my grandmother's legacy. Andrew's been alternating between apologizing and getting angry that I'm taking this too far. His latest text read, "Maya misses me. Don't let your pride hurt our daughter. My pride. Not his threat to take her away. My pride for protecting her future." The worst part? The doubt that crept in during those first few days. Lying awake at 3 a.m., listening to Maya's peaceful breathing in the twin bed next to mine in my childhood room, wondering if I was being too harsh. If I was breaking up Maya's family over pride. If a good wife, a good mother, would have found a way to make this work. Then I'd remember the coldness in Andrew's voice when he threatened joint custody. The way he dismissed Maya's excitement about the house like it didn't matter. How easily he'd been willing to sacrifice our daughter's stability for his brother's convenience. No, I wasn't being too harsh. I was being a mother. Andrew's mom called on day 4, leaving a voicemail that made my blood pressure spike. "Isabella, honey, I know you're upset, but Andrew loves you. He loves Maya. Family is more important than property. What would your grandmother think about you tearing the family apart over a house? What would my grandmother think? She'd think I was finally listening to everything she taught me. She'd think I was protecting what she built instead of giving it away to someone who hadn't earned it." But the call that really got to me came from Andrew's sister, Maria, who I'd always liked. "Bella, I know my brother can be an ass, but is this really worth it? Kevin's situation is temporary. Can't you just help for a year or two?" For a moment, listening to Maria's reasonable voice, I almost wavered. Almost let myself believe that maybe I was overreacting, that good families compromise, that love means sacrifice. Then Maya came running into the room, upset because she couldn't find her favorite stuffed animal, the one that was back at our apartment, in the life we'd left behind, because her father thought threatening custody was an acceptable negotiation tactic. "Mommy, when are we going home? When can I see Daddy?" How do you explain to a child that home became a bargaining chip? That Daddy thought she was a tool to control Mommy? I called a divorce lawyer that afternoon. The consultation was both terrifying and liberating. Jennifer Walsh, recommended by a coworker who'd been through her own messy divorce, looked over everything. The deed to my grandmother's house, the will, our marriage certificate, bank statements from the rental account I'd kept separate. "The house is your separate property," she said, setting down the paperwork. "Inherited assets don't become marital property in this state unless you've significantly commingled funds or added his name to the deed." I haven't done either. The rental income goes into a separate account I opened specifically for property expenses. Nothing from our joint account has ever touched that house. Perfect. He has zero legal claim to that property. She leaned back in her chair. "What about custody? That's usually the more complex issue." My throat tightened. "He threatened to fight me for custody if I didn't give the house to his brother." Jennifer's eyebrows shot up. "He said that explicitly?" I showed her the text thread. Her expression darkened as she read. "This actually helps your case significantly. Courts don't look kindly on parents who use children as leverage in property disputes. We'll document all of this. Keep screenshots of everything. Every text, every voicemail, every social media post from him or his family about this situation." "You think I can get primary custody?" "Based on what I'm seeing here, I think you'll get what you're asking for. A parent who threatens to disrupt a child's stability over an inheritance dispute raises red flags with judges." I filed the next day, had the papers served to Andrew at work, because I couldn't bear to see his face when he realized I wasn't bluffing. The meltdown that followed was spectacular and predictable. "You actually filed? Are you completely insane?" His voice was shaking when he called, and part of me, the part that had loved him for 7 years, felt a stab of pain at how broken he sounded. "You threatened to take Maya away from me, Andrew. I'm protecting both of us." "I didn't mean it literally. God, Isabella, you know I'd never actually try to take Maya away from you. I took you literally. That's what happens when you threaten someone's child. This is insane. You're destroying our family over a house." "I'm destroying our family?" The anger I'd been holding back for weeks finally broke free. You're the one who decided your brother's housing situation was more important than your wife and daughter. You're the one who thought you could threaten custody to manipulate me. Kevin really needs this, Bella. He's family. Even now, even after I'd filed for divorce, he was still trying to sell me on giving Kevin the house, still acting like that was the reasonable solution. Kevin needs to learn how to budget and make better choices. That's not my job to teach him. You're being vindictive. I'm being protective. There's a difference. I hung up and blocked his number. I was done being manipulated, done explaining why protecting my daughter's inheritance wasn't vindictive. Then his family went nuclear. Kevin actually showed up at my workplace 2 days later. I was in the middle of reviewing quarterly reports when security called to say there was a situation in the lobby. I looked down from my third-floor office window and saw Kevin pacing back and forth, gesturing wildly at our receptionist. By the time I made it downstairs, he was shouting about how I was a heartless bitch who cared more about money than family, how his kids were going to be homeless because of my selfishness, how I was destroying lives over just a house. Security escorted him out while he yelled that this wasn't over, that I'd regret tearing his family apart. The entire lobby full of people stared as he was walked to the door. My boss, Carol, called me into her office afterward. She's a woman in her 50s who's been through her own divorce wars, and she had that look on her face that said she'd seen this type of drama before. "You okay? What was that about?" "I'm getting divorced. My husband's brother thinks I should give him my inherited house." She blinked slowly. "He thinks you should give him a house." "Yep. And when I said no, my husband threatened to fight me for custody of our daughter." Carol's expression shifted to something I recognized, the look of a mother who'd protect her cubs at any cost. "He threatened your child over his brother's housing situation?" "That about sums it up." She shook her head. "Take whatever time you need for legal stuff. And if that man shows up here again, we'll have him arrested for trespassing." But Kevin's public meltdown was nothing compared to what Andrew's mother did next. She called my mom. Big mistake. My mother, Carmen Rodriguez, worked 2 jobs to put herself through nursing school as a single mom after my father left when I was 12. She doesn't do emotional manipulation, and she sure as hell doesn't tolerate anyone threatening her granddaughter. The conversation, as my mom later recounted it to me with barely contained fury, went something like this. "Carmen, your daughter is being unreasonable about this house situation. Andrew loves her and Maya. Family should help family. My daughter is protecting her child's inheritance from your son's poor judgment. Andrew just wants to help his brother. That's what good families do. Good families don't threaten custody to manipulate property transfers. Isabella is being vindictive and selfish. Isabella is being a mother. Your son chose his brother over his wife and daughter. Now he gets to live with that choice." Andrew's mother apparently started crying then, talking about how I was destroying her family, how this was all a misunderstanding. My mom's response was epic. "Your son destroyed his own marriage when he decided threatening my granddaughter was an acceptable negotiation tactic. Your daughter-in-law owes your other son exactly nothing. Have a blessed day." Then she hung up. The divorce process moved surprisingly quickly once Andrew's lawyer realized they had no case. His attorney tried one last desperate move, claiming I owed Kevin something because we were family and that withholding help was somehow relevant to my fitness as a mother. My lawyer, Jennifer, shut that down so fast it made my head spin. "Your client threatened custody over a house that legally belongs to my client. We have documentation. Do you really want to go to court with that?" The final terms were exactly what I'd hoped for. I kept the house, got primary custody of Maya, with Andrew getting every other weekend and alternating holidays. He pays $800 a month in child support. Our retirement accounts got split. Cost me about $18,000 total. He pays his own legal fees plus half of mine. Small price to pay for protecting Maya's future and my sanity. The best part came during discovery, when we found out the truth about Kevin's desperate housing situation. My lawyer's investigator discovered that Kevin had never actually filed for increased custody of his children. He'd been using his supposed need for a stable home as emotional manipulation, but he hadn't done any actual legal work to see his kids more often. It was all lies, all of it. When I moved Maya back into my grandmother's house last month, she ran straight to the room we'd picked out as hers 18 months ago. The one with the window overlooking the garden where my grandmother used to grow tomatoes and roses side by side. "Mommy, is this really ours now? Forever?" "Yes, baby. This is ours. This is where Bisabuela wanted us to live." "And Daddy can't take it away?" The question broke my heart. A 5-year-old shouldn't have to worry about anyone taking her home away, but she'd heard enough of our arguments to understand that the house had been threatened. "No one can take it away. It's ours." That night, after Maya was asleep in her new room surrounded by boxes we still needed to unpack, I sat at my grandmother's kitchen table and found a letter she'd left for me in the deed paperwork. Her handwriting, shaky from arthritis but determined. "Mija, this house is for you and your daughters and their daughters. Never let anyone convince you that being generous means being foolish. I built this with your grandfather's hands and my heart. Protect it like I protected you." I cried reading it, but they were good tears, relief tears. Andrew attempted one final manipulation about 6 weeks after the divorce was finalized. He showed up during his scheduled pickup time for Maya and asked if we could talk privately. "I've been thinking," he said. "Maybe we rushed into this divorce thing. Kevin found his own place anyway. Maybe we could try counseling." "Kevin found his own place?" "Yeah, he's renting a room from some guy he works with. Turns out it's actually perfect for his budget." So, Kevin had found affordable housing all along. The crisis had been manufactured. The emergency that supposedly required my grandmother's house had solved itself the moment I stopped being a potential solution. "I'm glad Kevin figured out his housing situation," I said calmly. "So maybe we could work things out? Maya misses having both parents around." "Maya has both parents around. We just don't live together anymore." "Isabella, come on, we could make this work." "Andrew, you threatened to take our daughter away from me because I wouldn't give your brother my inheritance. There's no coming back from that." He left without another word. Haven't heard from him since except for the logistics of Maya's visits. Some people think I'm cold for choosing property over marriage. They're wrong. I chose my daughter's security over manipulation. I chose boundaries over being threatened. I chose to honor my grandmother's legacy over enabling someone else's poor decisions. Maya and I are building a good life in this house my grandmother fought so hard to give us. We planted tomatoes last weekend, just like Bisabuela used to. Maya talks to the plants like they're friends. The house isn't just property, it's proof that we belong here. It's our foundation, and no one will ever threaten to take it away again.